Fruitful Living with Sissel Anderson. Here on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and this entire month is dedicated, obviously, to the poor souls in Purgatory, the month of November. But how do we integrate praying for these souls in our lives? Well, we got Sissel Anderson to help us break through some of that. Good morning, Sissel.
Good morning, Keith. It's good to be with you here on this beautiful Wednesday morning to talk about the holy souls in Purgatory, which was great that Matthew kind of I was going to ask you, you know what this whole month is for, right? And then he kind of spoiled it for me. And not that you didn't already know that, but I was kind of hoping to do a little bit. But it's okay. It was a great reminder because I don't know about you, but I feel like with this month of November, sometimes we get really wrapped up with the first part of the month. We celebrate All Souls and All Saints very early in the month, and we kind of forget that we have the entire month of November to be able to remember to pray for our our brothers and sisters who have gone before us. And obviously it's something that we should be doing throughout the entire year, but there's kind of a special intention. I don't know if you've ever thought about this before, Keith, but the kind of November is really, Texas and Arizona and maybe those exceptions with the fall vibes, but November is when time change has happened, and of course Arizona does not participate in that, so but we're going to exclude Arizona from all my examples from now on. But it's darker much earlier. Everything is just a little bit more somber, if that makes sense. I think it's really interesting that the church put this particular this month that we are dedicated to something in November. It's an interesting time to do it because it makes us, I don't know, not that I'm saying that once it's darker you just contemplate death more, but maybe just a little bit. I don't know if you had any experiences growing up, doing anything particular with your family to pray for the souls, but I was, not raised in a Catholic household, but my grandmother was Catholic. And so my earliest memory of doing anything with someone who has already died was with my grandmother going to visit my uncle who had passed away, and we were visiting her. She's like, okay, we're going to go to the cemetery. And so we all pile in the car, go to the cemetery, and she's there. She cleaned off the grave. She's speaking to him, and she said some prayers. And I just remember thinking as a 5-year-old kid that this was pretty interesting because in Protestant circles, we don't really do that. It's an interesting, I don't know. We do a lot of praying for the family of the dead. We kind of, when someone dies, we're immediately like, oh, I'm so sorry. We're praying for your family. We would never say anything like we're praying for that person because we're kind of at that point, well, it's out of our hands. And to the extent that obviously we do not decide their judgment. Yes, it is out of our hands. But I just love that the way that God has had this set up for us is that we have some form of participation in this, because not only is it a good reminder for us to be praying, but it's just such a beautiful reminder that our prayers are doing something. It's a very direct correlation with our prayers. You pray, you're helping the souls in Purgatory. I don't know. Do you have any memories of doing anything with the souls?
A lot of the memories that I can think back initially off the top of my head is because I went to Catholic school, and so there was some emphasis on All Souls Day, but kind of like you're mentioning, it all kind of fizzles out towards the middle of November, and it might be because everybody's ramping up for the holiday, Thanksgiving, and then Advent soon begins not too long after, and so you're right, it does kind of fizzle out instead of just continuing the entire month.
And it's funny because it's purely consequential because, obviously when holidays have been celebrated, and not every Catholic is, American, we have Thanksgiving and this whole holiday season. But it's another interesting thing that we have this All Souls month right before these big family gatherings where you kind of are noticing the people who are missing. You're going into Thanksgiving dinner, and there might be an empty place where someone was, in the last couple of years, maybe a grandparent or, a friend. And so it's another interesting correlation. But I think, and several saints and holy people have noted that we have this innate desire to pray for the dead. I think it's in us to not just be like, okay, they've died. All right. Yay. Everything's, they're off with Jesus and that's it. We have this desire to be able to pray and ask for intercession. And interestingly, a very famous and well-known Protestant, good friend of the Catholics, almost Catholic man, C.S. Lewis, had an interesting quote about this. He goes, "Of course, I pray for the dead. The action is so spontaneous, so all but inevitable, that only the most compulsive theological cause against it would deter me. At our age, the majority of those we love best are dead. What sort of intercourse with God could I have if if what I love best were unmentionable to him?" And I think that's really, really beautiful reminder, that even though it's something that maybe we say we do as Catholics, it's actually, I think, the Orthodox and a lot of other Christian denominations do it, but it's the Protestant wing that doesn't practice it. But it's something really beautiful. If you're a Protestant listening right now, maybe consider it. But how do we go about making sure that we're integrating these prayers into our lives? What are some special things we can do this month? Well, obviously, hopefully you're able to attend your church if your parish had a Mass of Remembrance for All Souls. My church does it where you can write the names of your family members who have passed away in a book, and then they read it out, and you go bring up a candle to represent those people and put it at the front of the church, and then we do a procession out to our columbarium and do some more prayers there. In my young adult group, we did an All Saints party, but we also included some, because it was on All Souls that we did it, that we had everyone go out to the columbarium as well. We also did a prayer night recently where I had everyone in a less pretty way than maybe had been done in the church, but write on a index card their family members' names and kind of duct tape it to the wall. It wasn't quite as elegant, but we were still doing the prayers for them, and we had the Chaplet of Divine Mercy together. But like some other really simple things that are not just in this month, but also just like at all times. If someone mentions that someone has died, make the sign of the cross, take a moment to say a prayer. One of my first experiences with this was when I was in youth group before I had decided to become Catholic. Actually, maybe it was after, because I was on a little retreat. I was on a confirmation retreat as a non-Catholic at this point. And I mentioned something about some friend who had passed away. And I just remember a bunch of heads just bowed and like signs of the crosses were being done. And I was like, whoa, I triggered something here. But it's a good reminder to like stop and pray for the dead. If you think about someone in your life who has passed away, a friend of a friend, your family member, to stop and say a prayer. Visiting the graves and visiting a columbarium sometime during this month is a good opportunity as well. And pray for all the people that you know and you don't know. You have no idea where they are in their purgatory journey, and thankfully God is outside of time. So any prayers that you offer up are going to be, put towards that. There's obviously one prayer I think that most people might think of when you think about praying for souls, and that's, the St. Gertrude prayer, which I would love to say I have memorized. I do not, so that might be my goal this month, to try to memorize it, because it's short and sweet, but I need to get it done because I believe our Lord promised St. Gertrude that everyone who says it's 1,000 souls released. There are some qualifications for that. You'll have to look up for and research and make sure you do all the things required for it. But and St. Gertrude is someone who got a lot of visions from people in purgatory. She got a lot of people coming to her. One of her sisters passed away because she was a religious sister, and she said she was going to pray for 3 days for this sister and offer up for her soul in purgatory. And she somehow forgot to do one of the days. And that sister showed up to her in the night and was just like, "You still owe me a day of prayer." Okay. So this is serious business, guys. Don't forget the prayers. One thing that my family has done for the past 5 years is something very simple. And this is something you can do every single day, is that at the end of our table blessing, you say, wow, I can't remember our table blessing suddenly, but but at the end of the table blessing, you say, "May the souls of the faithful departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace." And we just add that on, tag it on. I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you're praying with another family and you don't know what their tradition is with praying the table blessing. And some people have add-ons. And so everyone always waits a second and is silent, like, what are we going to say? But that's a really easy one. And it rolls off the tongue very easily. And it's just a reminder in that. But we also, there's some cultures that are like, I think there's some cultures that are really good about remembering the dead, not always in the most Catholic way. There are some things that maybe go a little bit too far, but they'll put up pictures of their loved ones during like this time of the year to remember. Maybe put up some flowers. There are some cultures that you'll add some things and like putting up a bunch of food, like they're going to eat the food. Okay, that's not quite exactly Catholic teaching, but the idea of being able to put up. But I like that other cultures even think to pray, to even think about the dead, because a lot of us don't. A lot of Western culture really doesn't. But those are just some of the things that I have. I when I've gone to funerals, I try to make sure I hold on to the funeral prayer card that I've gotten, and I add that into my Bible or into my prayer book, so that when I, flipping through my Bible, it pops up and it reminds me to pray for that person. I don't know if there's anything that you think to do or like to do.
No, I really like the prayer that you mentioned, like the meal prayer, where like you say the meal prayer and then you mentioned like the souls have gone before us. Like that is, especially if you're like in either a public setting or you're with a group of other Christians, and you mention that's gonna leave an impression without it. Yeah.
That's another thing, is that don't be afraid. I know we tend to self-censor ourselves. If a Protestant friend of ours dies and we tell their family, we might not say that we're praying for their soul thing, because we're like, we don't want to freak them out. But that's something, it's a language I think that needs to be out there, so people are aware that that's something that we are doing. That's something we as Catholics really believe, is that it's not just praying for the family. You should absolutely pray for the family because they're going to be grieving, but say that I'm praying for them. Say I'm praying for them as well, and that's, and kind of invite them into that, so that if they feel scared, like, oh, I can't do that, like, I pray for them. It's such a beautiful part.
Great tips and suggestions there, Sissel. Really appreciate you every single Wednesday giving us a little bit of fruitful living to add to our lives, so thank you for that. But just a heads up for all of those listening on Aquinas Communications, we're going to keep them in our prayers as they will be starting their fund drive in just a few moments. They're actually going to be joined by Debbie Georgiani coming up to really kind of start the fund drive. So if you're listening on Aquinas Communications, that's exciting. Make sure to stay tuned. And for everybody else, we've got a whole nother hour coming up. And about maybe 17, 18 minutes or so, we're going to be talking with pro-life advocate Deborah Bricado, talking all about these abortion laws that passed across the country, not just in Maryland, but in so many states. And even then, the ones that didn't pass, it was a pretty close call. So we're going to talk about that coming up after this break here. But otherwise, if you're going to be maybe getting another cup of coffee, or maybe you're dropping your kids off at school, unable to really listen to the majority of the second hour, we've got you covered, okay? We've got you covered. Just search Morning Joy Radio on YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts, we have Morning Joy, Where Truth Matters, as well as The Spirit World with Debbie Georgiani and Adam Bly, and of course, The Quest, right, with Sarah Soto, Steve Gleason, and of course, Monsignor Charles Pope. So many great people and so many great productions. But stay tuned right here after this break on Morning Joy, Where Truth Matters.
This has been Morning Joy, Where Truth Matters, hosted by Keith Downey. Take some joy with you today. Visit grnonline.com/joy to listen again, share a segment, or answer the question of the day. That's grnonline.com/joy.